My name is Stephen Frost. I'm your moderator and host today. On behalf of GIZ Fabric, I welcome you all to our 13th webinar on Moving the Needle series. And today, the topic is the Pakistan Accord. I'm not going to go into much detailed introduction on this. I think everybody on the meeting is pretty up to speed with what's been happening there. In December, there was an announcement mid-December from the International Accord that the International Accord would be established in Pakistan, and then earlier this week on Monday, things really started moving with some literature going out to brands to sign up for the Pakistan Accord. Anyway, all of that will be explained in much greater detail by one of our experts. So it's my pleasure to welcome three speakers today. Things are a little bit different than what was on the invitation. Veronique Camara, who was to be our speaker from the International Accord, was in Pakistan last week, and she's fallen ill, having come back home, and she couldn't present today. But in her place, I'm very happy to welcome Miriam Neal. Miriam is a senior advisor with the International Accord on health safety in the textile and the garment industry. Miriam has a lot of experience. She started off with the Bangladesh Accord in 2014, spent 5 years focused on signatory engagement, policy development in Bangladesh. She went away and studied international law, and she's rejoined the team back in 2021, and just in time to help implement the new September 2021. Yeah, right. So just in time to help implement the new International Accord. I'm just thinking back to when it was released. So she's had over 15 years of experience working with companies and trade unions on workers' rights issues in the textile supply chain, as well as the food supply chain. But today we're talking about textiles. We've also got another speaker that is not on today's invitation, last minute inclusion, but we're very happy to have her. That second speaker is Kelly Riemann. Kelly is the Corporate Responsibility Manager in charge of social compliance in textiles and garment for the Buncher Group, a German company, and Kelly will introduce that company in more detail to you when I start talking to her. And our third guest, who is the only one who remains on the original invitation, so thanks for him, Mr. Mohammed Ubed, Component Manager, Labour and Environmental Standards in Pakistan's textile industry at GIZ. GIZ, of course, is the host for this panel discussion. Ubed works with private sector partners in Pakistan for GIZ, particularly sustainable business development in the textile industry. Before joining GIZ, he was at the National Productivity Organisation, the NPO, in Pakistan, and prior to that had worked in quality control for a textile mill. So a lot of experience in the industry and a lot of experience on the ground in Pakistan, particularly with health and safety in the sustainability space. So without any further ado, let's get into this. And I'm going to start off with Miriam, because Miriam is really the speaker here today from the International Accord. And I've mentioned briefly, December and January for the International Accord, but I wonder, Miriam, if you can just sort of give everyone a sort of an up-to-the-minute update on the status of the new program, what's been happening recently, just so we're all on the same page.
Thank you, Stephen, and thanks so much for organising this webinar. I'm usually on the other side watching these webinars. I find them very valuable just to keep up with developments in the industry. So it's a real honour for us to have been invited and just share updates on the Accord. Thank you for that. So I think I'll just start by saying, so I work for the International Accord, which was started in September 2021 as a successor to the Bangladesh Accord, which began in 2013, as most of you will know, running safety and health programs for our signatories, which cover inspections, safety remediation, monitoring and support for factories, training for safety committees and workers on safety issues and their role, so the workers' role in ensuring safety day to day, and a complaints mechanism, so for any safety issues to be raised in a confidential and safe manner. So that's what the Accord does in a nutshell, and we've done that for many years in Bangladesh before we handed over to the RMG Sustainability Council. And the signatories to the Accord, 189 companies sourcing garments and textiles around the world, and the global trade unions, IndustriALL and Global Union. So I represent the Accord Secretariat. We work on behalf of our signatories, and the international accords really was agreed between the signatories to continue the work in Bangladesh, continue the cooperation with the RSC, but also to look at where we can use this model, which has been very successful in really bolstering and improving safety in the Bangladesh industry, where that model can be used in other countries to have further kind of confidence and ensure safety elsewhere. So from September 2021 onwards, we've been doing feasibility studies, really looking at a whole range of factors, but significantly looking at where are key sources for our company signatories, and where they're seen as like a real opportunity to improve safety in the sector. And 4 countries emerged as key priorities for our signatories for a range of those reasons, both to do with the sourcing, but also to do with the safety needs. And Pakistan is one of those priority countries. So our steering committee urged us to do further work there in the last few months. There's been a lot of engagement with stakeholders there to explore more how this could be done, and particularly how this could be done in cooperation with stakeholders in the industry in Pakistan. So my colleague Veronique, who was supposed to be on this call, and our director Joris Oldenseal have spent a lot of time in Pakistan in the last, I would say, 10 months. And through their reports back and through also our company signatories' engagement with their suppliers, a decision was made amongst the steering committee of the Accord in mid-December to embark on a program in Pakistan. And that was announced on the 14th of December. And since then, it has been briefed to the signatories. The signatories were briefed all the way along, but the actual sort of the more details of what kind of program would be most suitable have been shared with the company signatories in mid-December. And then what you mentioned about what we sent out on Monday this week, so the 16th of January, we sent a really detailed information pack to all of the company signatories in the Accord, with things like what would be the next steps once they sign up to the Pakistan Accord Agreement with the global unions. What would be the next steps to actually bring this to life and put it into effect? I would say I noticed one of the comments from Shahid Sattar in the chat right at the beginning to clarify that the Accord is not a legal entity in Pakistan. Absolutely, it's not. So we're still at the phase where our signatories to the Accord are really showing their commitment to start this kind of these safety programs with their suppliers. So we're at that stage, and the next stage would be once we've got all signatories officially confirming their commitment to a program, then we would be able to take the next steps to see how we actually establish ourselves as an entity to be able to do any real work there. So this is an important clarification that you know that's the point that we're at. So we've already had some signatories this week. They were ready. They didn't really need the information pack. They already knew for many years that they wanted to start a program here. So some signatories have already sent in their signed agreements, and others are going through internal reviews. And it's fairly straightforward because they've been doing this work through the Accord in Bangladesh for many years, so companies, our signatories, understand pretty well what's involved. So we don't expect any issues there, and in the coming days we'll see more of our company signatories officially kind of sign the agreement.
Thanks, Miriam. Thanks for fielding that inquiry. And just a reminder to any attendee, please use the chat box to ask any question or make any comment. Speakers can see the chat box, so if they're keeping an eagle eye open on that, they can perhaps deal with things as they go along. Otherwise, I'll also be monitoring it. And if we can't deal with a question while we're discussing things, I will definitely try and come back to it. At the end, we will have a Q&A session at the end to pick up any loose ends that we haven't covered. So thanks for that clarification, and thanks for putting it in the chat box. The person who asked that. So you mentioned the term or the phrase you used was a program in Pakistan. So the International Accord as a program in Pakistan. What do you mean by a program in Pakistan? You mentioned that you sent out this package on the 16th asking signatories what they expect, but do you have some sort of clarification yet, or are you still waiting to get feedback? You know, what's the status there?
Yeah, so the pack we sent to signatories was really detailed, and it's for what they can expect, not to tell us what they want, if you see what I mean. So
okay.
The programs are really well defined, and it's written into the agreement which our steering committee members shaped in December before they made that announcement. So when we talk about a safe workplace safety program, the key elements are very technical safety inspections of any factories producing for the company signatories, looking at fire protection, structural safety, electrical safety, and boiler safety. And so they're very technical inspections run by engineers. And off the back of that, we would get reports for a factory which identify areas for improvement. And the Accord then, and this is where one of the ways the Accord differs a lot to audit programs, is that there's a collective monitoring of the improvements and also technical support, which is in some cases really important, and alignment across the industry on how to implement certain areas of building codes and standards in the garment and textile context. So there's that's a very important part of our program, because it addresses sort of where there are serious safety risks. That's where they'll be identified and resolved in a timely manner and in a transparent manner for any of the brands sourcing there, and ultimately publicly as well. Once a factory's done all those things, then we recognise publicly that they've addressed and that they're fully compliant with building codes and standards. That's the whole part of our program. The other part is around what we call workplace programs, which are around workers' participation in safety and health, and starts with awareness. So we run training where is raising awareness about safety issues and for the whole workforce, but also training a safety committee in much more depth, so that a safety committee can be much more expert. And that would include workers and managers working together to monitor safety and health conditions in the factory and address workers' concerns, being the first port of call for workers if they have concerns. And yeah, that's another aspect of what the Accord has a lot of experience on. We know safety committees exist already. We know that other organisations, I think GIZ included, are also looking at the role of the safety committees. But I think we've always aligned in Bangladesh with other initiatives, so we worked very closely with Better Work to ensure that we didn't overlap or duplicate, and we would do the same if we're to start in Pakistan. We'll do exactly the same with GIZ, with ILO, with any other programs that exist. so that we don't duplicate. But I think the scale of the accord often has been greater than other programs, so we kind of cover parts of the industry that others don't reach. And that goes back to one of the provisions of the accord is full disclosure of the supply base to into our central database, so that we get a really full picture of we cover all factories in the supply chain producing for those signatories. So I hope that answers your question about what the program, what it means by safety program.
Yeah. So you've got, I think I looked at this on Monday. I think there's 180 signatories. Maybe there's a few more since Monday. I don't know. Around 180 signatories.
Yeah.
And so those signatories are now being asked to sign the Pakistan Accord.
Yes. Yeah.
And is there a time frame for that? Have you got a are you waiting until you get a certain number of signatories before you move to the next step, or are you already preparing to move to the next step? Can you tell us a bit about how that's working?
Yeah. There isn't a time frame for that. Each company differs in how they go through those kind of reviews before they sign up to a legally binding agreement like this. So we sort of we're not going to say you've got to do this in a week, because it really differs by company. But there are some kind of markers in the sand. So on next week, we will be holding a caucus meeting for all signatories to the accord, hybrid meeting online and in person. And that will be an opportunity for any companies that haven't yet signed to raise any questions, if they're facing any kind of internal questions during their reviews, then that's a really key opportunity for our signatories to get those ironed out, so that they can move to the next stage. The global unions will also attend that session, so if there's any discussions needed there, then that can take place. So I think what we try to do as the Secretariat is just facilitate as much as possible so that there's no obstacles, but really it's up to each company how quickly they move.
And then what are the key milestones, say, for 2023, for the next 11 and a half months remaining?
Yeah.
What are you hoping to?
Yeah, so we've set out an implementation plan, which also has been shared with all the signatories. It's been agreed by the steering committee. And phase 1 is really about establishing the accord as an entity and defining some of the parameters. So, for example, we want to move sort of slowly but steadily in establishing the programs once we've got established as a legal entity, and that will be done on the basis of a risk assessment. So we're going to move into defining the parameters for that quite carefully, so that if we have, say, 500 factories listed with us, how do we decide where to start? And we want to do that in a very smart way. So we'll be doing that kind of preparation. And communications is a really key part of this work in the early phases. So making sure that there's very good awareness and understanding of what the accord is there to do and what benefits it can bring. And key to that is how we work with different stakeholders. So there will be preliminary conversations about what governance should look like for this initiative in the long term. We want to start those conversations early, so now, rather than waiting several years, but make sure that national stakeholders have a route to be included and included in the governance from the early phases. Also in phase 1, we'll be defining more the factory disclosure. So Pakistan's quite different to Bangladesh in that there's more backward linkages, there's more textile production. the accord for Pakistan includes textile production, but not for implementing the program straight away. But we at least need to map that part of the supply chain with our signatories. So we're trying to gather that data already to get more of an understanding. That will also evolve because we know not all signatories have that information yet. So this is these are kind of all of the preparatory work that we'll be doing.
Okay, thank you. I can see there's a few questions here. I've seen a question here from Lucy Brill and one from Sonia Westall. I'm going to come back to those questions. I'm sure Miriam can see them too, but I'm going to come back to them later because I want to move on to Ubaid, who's here from GIZ in Pakistan. We talked last week on the phone about in preparation for this, and one of the things that we talked about was, you know, the international accord didn't just arrive out of thin air in Pakistan one day. There'd been quite a lot of groundwork. There'd been quite a lot of things happening in the health and safety, occupational health and safety space in Pakistan for a number of years. And I'm wondering if you can give us some sort of context and some background about the stakeholders involved in Pakistan, the kinds of health and safety work that was slowly developing in Pakistan as a lead up to this announcement in December from the International Accord.
Okay, thank you so much, Stefan. And I'm glad that you invited me on this very important topic. I am working as component manager in the GIZ Textiles program. Talking about this Pakistan Accord, my role here is to, as you rightly asked, that what sort of occupational health and safety measures or affairs are there already before even Accord is arriving to Pakistan. So I would quickly like to take you to the journey that we had so far in Pakistan. When we started our interventions in specifically for the textile and garment sector of Pakistan. The whole journey actually started in 2013 when Pakistan ratified all 27 core international conventions on human rights, labor standards, environmental protection, and good governance. So as a result of that ratifications, Pakistan got GSP Plus status in 2013. Which means that Pakistan's textile and garment industries can now take benefit from the preferential access to the European market. In a simple word, it's a duty-free access opportunity for the Pakistan textile and garment industry. And just after GSP Plus status that Pakistan got in 2013, GIZ initiated a project with the name of Improvement of Labor standards in textile and garment sector, especially for the province of Punjab. Since then, 2014, we are supporting government, we are supporting private sector, and also trade unions for the effective implementation of labor standards in the whole supply chain. Although at the start, if you see the occupational health and safety is not part of the core 27 international conventions, but the GSP Plus could easily be jeopardized if, God forbid, a major incident occurs at the workplace. So it was realized quite early that the labor standards have to be addressed in an integrated manner, where OSH, occupational health and safety, will play a vital role. So in order to encourage and motivate the private sector on occupational health and safety at the workplace, our partner, the Labor and Human Resource Department of Punjab, have actually conducted a very, very interesting and innovative, I would say, on a very innovative topic, and that was the return on prevention study for textile sector. That study, as I said, was conducted by the Labor and Human Resource Department with the help of GIZ, was actually illustrate the potential of the economic benefit behind the occupational health and safety measure, which was at that time calculated as 1:2, 2.5. Means that if you invest $1 for any kind of intervention regard to occupational health and safety as a preventive measure, you can get $2.5 as return you made on the preventive measure. So this was a very unique idea to address this topic of occupational health and safety with on the platform of government approaching private sector, because the economics, once we deal with the private sector, the economic terminologies are very, very important, right? So that was a very good attempt by the government, and GIZ was on the back side and supporting the Labor and Human Resource Department for completing the whole study, and we completed and published the whole study in 2017. In 2017, again, the Labor and Human Resource Department brought an international campaign on occupational health and safety called Vision Zero. This campaign, international campaign, was actually developed by ISA, International Social Security Association, and the mandate of that Vision Zero was, or the objective of the Vision Zero was to have a zero accident at the workplace. So this was a very bold and a very, I would say, a critical step that was taken by our partner Labor and Human Resource Department, that they Punjab province for the textile and garment sector. And that was, as I said, developed by the ISA, and the target for Vision Zero is to have no accident at workplace. And again, with the help of GIZ and its downstream institution, especially the Center for Improvement of Working Condition and Environment, has actually rolled out the Vision Zero campaign in the textile and garment sector and to the other industrial sector in general as well. The Center for Improvement in Working Condition staff is very much vibrant on Vision Zero rollout program, and actually with the help of GIZ that established 15 Vision Zero lighthouse factories, where they implement 7 golden rules of Vision Zero with the help of GIZ. And these 15 lighthouse factories were established, and then these were actually served as a model for other factories to see, and these factories have achieved the zero accident level at their workplace there. A very important milestone in Pakistan was in 2018 and 2019. The Occupational Safety and Health Bills were passed by the provincial assemblies of Punjab and Sindh. That was a very, very good and a big milestone for the government side. And according to this OSH Act, every manufacturer or manufacturing or industrial sector must have occupational health and safety committee in their workplace or council, and have a dedicated staff, which the act called as safety officer in their premises. So GIZ again supported these, especially the LHRD, the Labor and Human Resource Department, in developing the prevention strategy for the province of Punjab, specifically in the context of textile and garment sector, and where the LHRD developed a specialized curriculum for the safety officers and also for labor inspectors, because the safety officers that are being deployed in the factory would actually have to learn new techniques and principles of occupational health and safety. While on the other hand side, the labor inspector, the government machinery, they also have to learn and capacitated ourselves on these new topics. So we actually supported LHRD in both ways, right? So that these two entities talk to each other on the same language when the labor inspectors visited them in the factories there. So it was a well conceived idea from the private sector, and this rolling out of development of safety officers is right now LHRD is doing it with the help of GIZ. Further, for the implementation of this act, the prevention campaign were also launched by Lahore, by the Labor Human Resource Department, again with the help of GIZ, on the topics specifically for fire safety, heat and stress, chemical safety, ergonomics, and last but not the least is the electrical safety hazards. So these were the initiatives that were already being taken, and we are and most of them are in full swing with regard to the intervention with the help of government of Pakistan, because that's a platform and that's a machinery which actually is by law is responsible to take care of all these measures. And our GIZ role is to strengthen our partners' capacity so that they perform their jobs better. Right. On the private front, on the private sector front, GIZ has also implemented and developed a very, I would say, a very unique methodology. We call them the Dialogue for Sustainability. And the Dialogue for Sustainability is a change management methodology or approach, which brings cultural change in any organization, which is more sustainable than audit-based approach. And we have seen this phenomena that audit-based approach, as long as any pressure, because of any pressure or any time bound situation, certain things get improved, but you never know about the sustainability. And that was the question number one, and the problem that we identified quite early, that GIZ wants a sustainable solution of all the measures, a sustainable betterment of the whole sector, not just over the period of GIZ time, things gets improved, and as long as we are not there, so things would return to square one position. And this was not the thing that our objective was. And that's why we always, from the very front, involved and partnered with government machinery, the trade associations, and also the trade unions. So all three major key stakeholders are always with us. And last but not the least, during all these interventions over the past 7 years, we had received a full support from Ministry of Commerce, being the federal ministry, and the trade association, as I said, and trade unions. In fact, MOC, the Ministry of Commerce, has already published the textile policy for the year 2020 to 2025, which also covers the occupational health and safety and other measures there, where GIZ is also supporting them for the implementation of the whole thing. So these are the few aspects that are already addressed and are addressing by the involvement of these machinery state ministries with the help of GIZ. Yes, Stefan.
Yeah, I think this is very important. You know, your contribution here, I think, is very important because what it shows very clearly is a tripartite approach. So you've got government, you've got business, and you've got unions, all involved in developing programs, working on projects for occupational health and safety around all of the issues that the International Accord covers: electrical safety, boiler safety, building safety, all of these issues. And so the International Accord, or the Pakistan Accord, is not entering into a completely alien environment. It's coming into an environment where the groundwork has already been put in place by a tripartite process, of which the government has played an important role. Various ministries and in various provinces, particularly Sindh and Punjab.
Yeah, very much right. Because this is the demand the need of the hour at that time. Because without involving all the key stakeholders, we cannot make sure the sustainability of all the efforts that what we want to achieve. The objective of all three stakeholders are same. The only thing is we need to align all three stakeholders in a way that we achieve the common goal in a better manner. And the one thing that when we start, if I remembered it correctly, in start we also had some difficulties in 2020, in 2015, for instance, or 2014. So what we did actually, we actually first develop a trust building measures. We align our activities with the government policies, so that we had a very good trust with the government, and also we also approach private sector through government and directly also, and try to explain our existence, our purpose, and our objective. And I said, like, for example, ROP, return on prevention, is a classical methodology where you actually speak to any entrepreneur to the same language, because they are more concerned on economic returns and everything. And this exactly we are actually addressing OSH without saying that we are working on OSH, right? And ultimately we reach to the joint and combined objective at the end. So the involvement of three stakeholders are very important to sustain all the efforts. And I'm sure neither us nor any development sector organization wants that their activities would be rolled back after they exist. Right? They want their partners to be strengthened and work without their support after certain time, and that's what we are expert on. We try to develop the capacities of our stakeholder so that they perform the job, not us. Right? We would actually, our role is to develop their capacity, and they have a task to perform the job. Right? Where you can say safety officers or labor inspectors or any other machinery. So they are the ones. So our job is to equip them properly so that they perform their job quite efficiently. One thing, last thing, and that is in 2018, as we have already partnered with Labor and Human Resource Department, and we did a lot of capacity development measures, and we felt like there is a sense prevailing in the whole department that was actually pushing us to initiate this process of transferring the police role of labor inspector to advisory role. Right? And that was a big shift at that time, because before that nobody is thinking of labor inspector advising something. Rather, they see labor inspector as a police who just can stop the work wherever they find any ambiguity. So we supported LHRD to realize this aspect, that you have to have an advising role first, and then policing later. All right, don't do it other way around. That can threaten, that can demotivate the private sector. The private sector want improvement. Every industry wants improvement, right? But the thing is, they need support. And if they get support from labor inspector advising them that you need to improve certain processes in that manner, everyone welcomes, right? And that's what we try to inculcate in the government machinery, supporting them. And that's why a curricula was established for the labor inspection. And we also supported in some legislation part also, where we try to identify that a certain minimum qualification requirement for labor inspector is required. A labor inspector must have a technical background, right? Something like that. Before that, the technical knowledge was not up to the mark, and that was the gap that we suggested, and they also realized that, and they now have already inducted the technical people now in that role. which of course in coming years you will see industry would actually receive a lot of good help from these labor inspectors, right? So these are the few things.
Thanks, Robert. That really clarifies a lot of stuff. And I think it's very important to hear that. I'm going to come to Kelly in a minute. I'm going to get sourcing in Pakistan. We've had a few questions about German and EU buyers popping up in the chat box. But before I get to Kelly, if I just come back to you, Miriam, is there anything that you'd want to add on to what Robert's been saying? And I presume you're keeping an eye on the chat box as well. Is there anything that you want to add there?
Thanks, Stephen. And thanks, Obaid, for that very thorough run through of the work that's been done since 2013. It's really, really good to share. I haven't followed the chat entirely because I was also concentrating on it can be very distracting. So raise anything you want to raise, Stephen, specifically. I would just reflect a little bit on this, I suppose the public-private themes in what you were talking about, Ubaid. I find that very interesting, and it's always been an interesting aspect of our work as well, is to constantly adjust and find our place, which is, as the Accord is very much working with the private sector. So we're a private sector initiative of the clothing textile buyers, working with their suppliers, and in alignment with the priorities as well raised by unions from the worker side. So it's I was just reflecting when you were talking that all the work GIZ is doing and that really the Pakistani authorities are doing to increase capacity around labour standards is very much in the public sphere, and building capacity in the industry, but also playing an enforcement role. And I think what the Accord, the role of the Accord is really to bolster the private sector's ability to meet those standards. And make sure there's a level playing field, because we all know it's a fiercely competitive industry. So it can be hard for producers to take the leap to make their facilities really fully compliant, especially if there's some costly areas, if their competitors down the road are not under the same pressure to do so, under the same expectation to do so. So I think the fact that the Accord is a collective of so many buyers asking for the same thing has had a very important effect in leveling the playing field, so that producers have confidence that they won't lose out if they take the step to fully meet safety standards, but also providing that technical support. And what we've seen as well is that, you know, the Accord built up its own engineering expertise in a team of sort of 100 engineers that became very expert in their areas and in really the very practical implementation of standards on the factory floor. But also we've seen brands, also the bigger brands particularly, hiring engineers to understand those standards and make sure they can support the factories. So I sort of just wanted to make that reflection that there are really two sides of the coin. And I think what's important is that the dialogue is very, very close and continuous between what's happening, what the government what the government strategy is, and what how the private sector kind of rallies together to meet those expectations. Yeah, I suppose all the work that GIZ is doing on capacity building, if as and when the Accord starts in Pakistan, we would need to align very closely on that to make sure that the messaging around, not just the messaging, but the actual technical requirements are very much aligned, and that there's absolutely no room for confusion or difference of opinions about those. So I think that certainty for business is really, really key. And it's something which we also have quite a lot of experience from now in Bangladesh, making sure that there is continuous dialogue across these parties involved about exactly what the technical requirements are, what the expectations are, and then the technical support to meet those.
I'm just going to hold off going to Kelly for just a couple more minutes. We've got quite a few comments in the chat box from Mr. Shahid Sattar. Mr. Shahid Sattar is, of course, the Secretary General of APTMA, the All Pakistan Textile Mills Association. And I'm not going to read all of his comments or questions, but a lot of what he's asking is encapsulated in a question from George Thaler. What will be the relation of the Accord to the government in Pakistan? What sort of collaboration with building control authorities and labour inspectorate is envisaged? And I think this gets a bit to the question that Mr. Shahid Sattar is asking, is what is the relationship between the Accord and the government? What's the extent of conversations between the Accord and the government, and what's envisaged there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing to describe is that over the last year, Accord representatives have been meeting with representatives from different parts of the government at federal and provincial level, both Ministry of Commerce, but also Labour and Human Resources Department in Punjab and Sindh, those provinces, because they're the key areas for the garment and textile industry. So the dialogue began almost a year ago, introducing the Accord and laying the ground and explaining that there's interest from signatories to run safety programs with their suppliers. So that dialogue's been running through repeated visits and engagement and exploring the feasibility of organising an Accord, a set of Accord programs for our signatories. And there've been lots of questions, of course. There's lots of, people in government need to understand exactly what they're dealing with, and this is an unusual organisation. So there's been lots of dialogue, but I think the feedback that we got through the last year is that there is strong support from the government to have the Accord do these programs with our signatories and their suppliers, because they can see the benefit to build capacity in the industry and also the benefit for securing the industry really for the long term, that it's seen as a trusted source. So in Bangladesh, we know now, almost 10 years on, that the Bangladesh garment industry can very confidently and reliably position itself as one of the safest in the world, because there's been such a concerted effort across the whole industry, or the whole export industry, I should say. And that's seen as a big potential opportunity for Pakistan. So we've had that feedback that there is strong support. That was up until that influenced quite heavily the signatories' decision to announce, to make an agreement and define the terms of a program and then announce it in mid-December. And my colleagues, so our director and our head of policy, were back in Pakistan last week to follow up after the announcement and meet again with government stakeholders, and explore exactly what the next steps will be for the Accord to actually set up and establish itself. So that's where we're at. Is just we're now ready, because our signatories have reached an agreement amongst themselves that they want to start programs in Pakistan. The next step for us is to really explore how that can be done in the best way, and establish ourselves as a legal entity in order to run programs on behalf of our signatories. So that's as far as we are now.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's still, we still need to explore the exact form that will take. And then coming to the question about the relationship with government, I've been, you know, I already made reflections from Ubaid's contribution that, you know, the Accord is very distinct from an organisation like GIZ that goes into to work extremely closely with government. So we would want to have a very clear engagement that will involve some capacity building. So there was interest. I mean, I know myself when I've met the Sindh OSH inspectors, I've met all the OSH inspection team a few years ago, and they're very interested in kind of sharing lessons from what the kind of work we've done in garment factories. So there is interest on the kind of capacity building side, technical side. But to George's point around building codes, I think it's a bit too early to say. Those discussions still need to be had.
Yeah, I know you're getting bombarded with questions here, but yeah, I think that's clarified quite a lot there. We can come back to some of these, I think, in the Q&A period. But I want to move on to Kelly now, who's been patiently sitting here waiting. Kelly, can you just introduce the Buncha Group so people know? I know beforehand you were telling me it may be known more commonly in Pakistan under another name, so perhaps you can introduce that and let people know exactly what your company does.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So our company, while the name might not be as known unless you're, you know, working more intensely in this industry, we are a group of importers and offices working as agents internationally, but we also are sourcing from Pakistan. We have 2 offices. And I think if you're tuning in from Pakistan, you probably know us better as Eurocentra Pakistan. We source primarily garments and textiles from Pakistan, but generally the Vunsha Group, we import all sorts of products, food, electronics, hard goods, but I am responsible for garments and textiles.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the background of the company and its relationship to the Accord? That might be the Bangladesh Accord. I'm not too sure, but with
Sure.
the International Accord and then the Pakistan Accord.
Sure. So we are a family-owned company, and from the very beginning, corporate social responsibility has been embedded in our corporate identity, and it's something that's very important to our CEOs. So when the international or then the Bangladesh Accord came into effect, we signed on quite quickly. And one of the reasons also is because a lot of our customers are also Accord signatories. So for us, it made sense. And we've been working closely with the Accord since its beginning. And as a brand, we are part of this brand caucus, and we had the ability to vote and share our opinions for the past few years, kind of forming and shaping what we expect, what we want, what our industry would benefit from the most with regards to a Pakistan or an extension of the Accord.
Right, and so you would have received this. You would have received the package that was sent out on the 16th from the International Accord. And so internally within the company, what do you see occurring over the next 12 months of 2023? You know, what's happening for you?
So, like Miriam was saying, there's a bit of an internal review of the Accord. We're quite comfortable with the Bangladesh Accord and the international accord, so we know more or less what to expect, but there are some variations with the Pakistan Accord. So we have our lawyers review because it is a legal document and we need to know, can we meet these requirements? The next step would be signing. We have already notified all of our suppliers that we will be signing. This is what they should expect, and most of our suppliers have taken part in a town hall meeting that was held just a week or two ago in Pakistan. So we're just trying to get the conversation going, trying to convince them and encourage them that this is a good thing that's coming to Pakistan. This is something that we expect for them to be part of, and try to share as much information as possible so that it doesn't come across as unexpected or as a surprise.
Okay, I'm intrigued by the town hall meeting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Was that a physical meeting in Pakistan, or was that a how did that work?
I personally wasn't there, but because it was a physical meeting in Pakistan, but my colleagues in Pakistan did attend. It was more or less an information session about kind of like what we're doing today. You know, what is the Pakistan Accord? What can suppliers expect? What's the timeline? What kind of phases will it be rolled out in? And it was an opportunity for suppliers to ask questions directly and kind of familiarize themselves.
And you get a sense that, you know, how do suppliers respond to this? Are suppliers, are they, you know, is their response, well, this is, you know, we need to do this if we want to keep in business with, you know, your group? How do they respond to this?
It's definitely a mix of responses, as you can imagine. Some are a bit hesitant and resistant. They're not really sure what's to come. I think until actually the first inspections take place, that's when they will really realize, okay, this is what's expected from us. We also don't have the technical guidelines yet in hand. So once we have them, we can share them with our factories, and they will also get a better feeling from what physically is required from the factory in terms of safety. On the other hand, I think a lot of factories are really excited, actually. They've seen what's happened in Bangladesh. They want to establish themselves as an international export and to be taken very seriously. And a lot of factories in Pakistan are already at a point where they can be considered safe factories, right? But generally, Pakistan does not have safe factories, so they want to be known as this is a safe place to source from. Don't judge us by, you know, the worst case factories. And I think the worst case factories are ready to go up to that international standard.
Yeah. Are you able to talk about your experience with Bangladesh? I don't know how long you've been, you know, were you involved with the Bangladesh Accord? Are you able to talk about, you know, during the time of the Bangladesh Accord, there was some resistance. Then, you know, in the last 12 months, for example, the Bangladesh government, you know, BGMEA, has been a vocal advocate not only of sustainability, but the benefits that safe factories, environmentally friendly factories. We all hear about the LEED certified factories in Bangladesh. We've all heard, and of course it's true, that Bangladesh now has the most LEED certified factories, you know, garment factories in the world. I forget the number now, it's 150 or something like that. You know, the BGMEA has really kind of got on board with this over time, and I suspect that see a similar thing in Pakistan.
I 100% agree. So I think there was a lot of resistance from certain parties in the beginning of the implementation of the Bangladesh Accord, but now it's something the country and a lot of parties are really proud of, and that they should be proud of. It's something internationally regarded as a success story. And if you go into those factories, the same factories maybe you visited 10 years ago, you will see the physical difference. But also, like what you were describing, it's more of a change in culture around safety and safe workplaces. And I think that takes a lot of time. So Bangladesh is at that point now. And I think after years of the accord being in Pakistan, hopefully there will also be a pride around workplace safety that might not exist yet.
Yeah, it's, you know, I first visited Bangladesh factories 25 years ago, and today there's no comparison between, you know, the best factories in Bangladesh are so far ahead of what factories were 25 years ago. You know, there's no comparison, and there is a pride. There is an enormous sense of pride about not just about lead, but about the entire industry being able to really rise an enormous amount, and that is, you know, and that is paid off in the exports for the country. Of course, COVID hit everybody, but you know, Bangladeshi exports to the US have gone up, and you know, it's just on and on. Yeah, so I think, is there anything else you want to say about your strategy in Pakistan? Is there anything more? Because I'm going to come back to Miriam with some of the questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to kind of talk about there were questions in the chat about how to encourage EU and German suppliers?
Yes. I
Okay.
sass that. I forgot it.
I can also wait, but I don't know.
I have to go back a long way to find that, right? So Ashad asked, how do you get, just so everyone knows the question, how do you get German or EU buyers on board? After all, each buyer company has numerous factories in their pool of suppliers who can motivate factories to sign the accord. Any plan to address EU German buyers? That's the question you were thinking of.
Okay.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because I think right now, I don't know how much work the accord will have to do to encourage German and EU suppliers, because I think it's a kind of common sense thing right now, especially in Germany. We have already the Supply Chain or Due Diligence Act in place. So we need to monitor our factories, not only for occupational health and safety, but one of the requirements legally is a grievance mechanism, which the accord also offers. So it helps a lot with fulfilling these due diligence requirements. And with regards to the rest of the EU, these laws are underway, and they are thought to be going to be stricter. So I think a lot of EU companies are looking for ways to fulfill their due diligence requirements. And I think signing the accord is a really good way to do that.
Yeah, and just on that, next week we've got another seminar in our deep dive technical webinar, which is on the German Due Diligence Act. Specifically, but one of the things we're going to touch on is the monitoring, reporting, and enforcement of the German Due Diligence Act. So, how do you get German buyers on board? Well, they're on board because the government. Well, not. I mean, it only applies to companies above a certain threshold of employees at the moment, but over time that will reduce. So more and more companies will be brought under the law. So I think for the German side, companies are on board because it's now the law. And as you say, the EU has got a draft bill out, and this is coming. There's no two ways about that. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. Uwe, you wanted to say something? Go ahead. Turn on your mic.
Now, hopefully you can hear me. Okay, good. I'm just want to shed some light on this German act and German law, and what is right now the affairs so far in Pakistan. Right now, you may have heard this thing or not, that the German ministry, one of the ministry, have actually established and introduced and launched rather a green button program. A green button is a one who actually follow the transparency principles, right? And then whoever will follow these all requirements will get permission to have the green button label on their products, right? So far in Pakistan, we have already introduced this, and we have established 6 to 7 factories are already working on it. 3 of them have got the permission from their brands to have that button on their product, right? Now the thing is that this is how we in GIZ we try to establish new initiatives in any country, like in Pakistan, for example. We establish these hubs or best practices or lighthouses. And then what now the result is in front of us. These 3 factories have received advance and increased orders, right? And we have the results in hand. Now we have already conveyed this to our political partner, which is Ministry of Commerce, that we have established this, and this is the opportunity. And what you may be like to know the response. The response was exceptionally well from Ministry of Commerce, because this is what exactly written in the textile policy, right? And this is a classical implementation of their own policy, right? And we are supporting them, and this is how we see a joint part with regard to the government part, and this is how we align ourselves with their policies, right? And now what happened, that another concern of all the private sector factories, specifically textile, because I have been reaching out to many textile producers and their CEOs and compliance manager. The one thing that I would like to address here is that every brand have their own requirements. Every brands consortium design their own requirements, compliance requirements name, and then on top there are individual code of conduct. So most of the time, these textile-oriented factories have actually deployed 10 to 15 people just to fulfill these audit requirements. Their job is nothing with regard to the value addition, but their job is to just fulfill and checklist, tick, 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 that. And most of their resources, most of their time are actually being involved in addressing all these things. These are all export-oriented factories. They are there for like many decades, right? They have reached to a very good level there. But with these documentation checklist system, it will actually hurt them a lot. And there was a strong request was asking from the private sector, that why don't you all have a one window, a one channel where any brand would actually utilize and come to that channel, and as a producer we just have one window to address that, right? And this request have now been taken by Ministry of Commerce, right? And Ministry of Commerce have now established National Compliance Center, and they have already conveyed this to European Union also, that they have now have a very rigorous plan to establish this National Compliance Center to try to combine all these compliance requirements through one channel, right? So this is a very good step, and GIZ is supporting from the very stretch, and this is the need of the hour, and that's what we felt like this is how other development sector organizations should also support in that context. And this could be one best practice in the whole region, that a government have established such centers there.
Yeah, nice point. Yes, Miriam.
I just wanted to ask Abhay to say a bit more about the National Compliance Centre, because I'm wondering what's the vision to ensure that buyers, hundreds of buyers from the export sector go through that National Compliance Centre? Like, how do you know how that will work?
Okay. First thing is, here I just mentioned the initiative and the vision of the Ministry of Commerce here, right? So they have a target, they have an objective, they have actually taken up the request from the private sector. For ages, they were just asking that, please, for ease of doing business, these requirements are actually consuming our resources here. So the good part is that now at least the federal ministry have taken up the request of their own private sector, and they are agreed to establish this thing. The modalities, to be honest, my colleague is working on more closely with them. They know the requirements and steps there. But the part that I would like to share here is that the request have been taken up, and we need, as GIZ, we are already given support to them to strengthen this and try to make them able to achieve that target. And that could certainly serve the Pakistan textile industry in general.
Okay, I'm going to head straight to Q&A. I'm a bit like Miriam. I've been focusing on what people have been saying, and I have seen the questions, but I think this is our most engaged chat box that we've had for some time. There's a lot of comments and questions here. Kelly, are you still here, Kelly? Kelly? Okay. Let's move on to Lucy. Lucy Brill from Homeworkers Worldwide. To Miriam. Miriam, you mentioned full disclosure several times. Do you mean the whole supply chain, including subcontractors? I think you addressed this a little bit, but
yeah, but people always want to check this. So a subcontractor could be known to a brand or not known to a brand. We all know that unauthorized subcontracting goes on in the garment industry as well. So I just want to say, either way, any factory producing clothing for our signatories should be on our factory list. That isn't always in the factory list provided by the brand, because if there's unauthorized subcontracting, they will not know about it. But if that information finds its way anyway, and there's various routes that a brand or the Accord can learn about it, then it comes onto the factory list and is then part of the program. But we define the scope of the Accord by production type. So the Accord will cover the cut, make, trim part of the supply chain, so the final production, as well as integrated facilities where fabric is produced and then sewn into a garment. And in future, it will also cover fabric production that's standalone, but the modalities for that are yet to be worked out, and that's a new kind of area for us. Because it wasn't a significant part of the Bangladesh supply chain. So we would need to work a lot in the next year or so with our signatories to really map the fabric production part of the supply chain and understand the different relationships. We know that there's different ways in which fabric producers, there's different business relationships for fabric producers with garment factories and with brands. Sometimes there's a direct relationship, sometimes there isn't. But certainly in terms of subcontractors, they would be within scope. But the challenge is really to know who they are.
Yeah, precisely. Kelly, are you back?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
I
I see you had a big problem with.
I lost
some technical
connection
problem
for a
with-
bit.
Bill Al asks, and this is, I'm sure this happened in Bangladesh too. Your factory has to spend money on design changes for the Accord. Will they get any financial support, or does the factory have to spend money by themselves? What's the German answer on that?
This is a very good question. Of course, this is on a lot of factories' minds because they don't want to be burdened with the receipt at the end. In the Accord legal document which we sign, we need to, in some way or another, provide funds for remediation. So whether that means that the orders will now cost more, or whether the factory, if they cannot pay for a very expensive mediation, they can come to us and we can give them financial support, whether it be a loan or that's up to the business partners themselves to decide. But that being said, in the Pakistan Accord, there's also an extra section, or maybe in the International Accord as well now, which allows for, if they cannot come up with a decision, basically, maybe it's a really expensive remediation, and the factory isn't getting help from the brand, then the Accord will provide a mediator to mediate the situation, so that both are held responsible. In most cases, though, I would say that the factory does pay for the remediations themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Miriam from Sonia Westfall. Will there be a complaint hotline for the Accord? If so, will it exclude discrimination and harassment and focus exclusively on fire, building safety?
Okay. Yeah, so there will be a complaints mechanism for anyone concerned about factory safety to use, and it won't be set up immediately. So we'll focus on our inspections to begin with, but in the first phase of inspections, we'll then start to make a plan for the complaints mechanism along with the training program, and we'll do that also in consultation with stakeholders so that we understand what provisions are already there, so that we can align well. But in terms of the question about scope, what the complaints mechanism will cover, it will indeed go beyond what we call engineering issues, like things to do with fire and building safety, and will cover broad occupational safety and health. So that could also include well, it does under our definition. It's a broad definition from which we draw from the ILO on that. Could also include harassment issues, can also include hygiene issues, issues to do with heat in the factory, access to water. It can include violence or threats of violence, maternity pay, sick pay. During COVID, our complaints mechanism in Bangladesh was used quite heavily to address all kinds of issues related with hygiene or furlough or pay related with the pandemic. So it is very broad.
Right. I'm just scrolling. We've got so many questions here. Boilers, are boilers covered?
Boiler safety will be included. Yeah.
Okay. Does the Accord apply to spinning and weaving textile mills?
Yeah, and that's where I mentioned if there are integrated facilities, which we think there are quite a lot, where there is spinning and weaving alongside garment production, then they will be included from the beginning. But if it's a standalone spinning and weaving facility which doesn't have garment production, then it wouldn't be included in the first phase. because we need to map that part of the supply chain and understand the business relationships between our signatories and those mills.
Right, thank you. Sorry, I'm now scrolling. We're getting into the last 10 minutes. I'm scrolling through.
I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, with Marion. You mentioned this boiler inspector, right? And inspection is also covered in the whole program of yours. So what if, as a producer, these boiler inspectors are also continuously visiting the facility where the boilers are installed there, right? And it is by law, every manufacturer industrialist has to declare that what sort of functions that the factories have. So boiler is a very critical instrument, and we have a separate technical system to analyze and inspect there. So as a supplier or as a manufacturer, I one day receive this inspection from your side, and other day inspection from another side, and then the other side. So this multiple inspection and multiple sort of involvement of the same thing would actually be a great concern, right, of the private sector. And I see there in the chat there are few questions is also around that topic, especially from some trade associations there, right? So could you please shed on light that how you have incorporate this concern if is it happen in the coming days in Pakistan when you start?
Yeah, I mean, I could give a very real example because we did some pilot inspections in December, and I was alongside the boiler inspector one day. So I think I know what you're referring to. I think I'll just check. I mean, the factory we went to, the boilers had been inspected by the inspector for boilers and issued a certificate that the boiler was fit for purpose. But it also included a bunch of recommendations or actions that the factory should take to maintain the boiler safety. So we followed up on those actions, and the engineer I was with checked those. So he raised concern that the actions hadn't been taken. And I think the frequency of those boiler inspections is maybe once a year or something. I don't know if it's always in every case, but the factory was expecting another visit a year later. And so the Accord was able to follow up and see, okay, which of these have you done and not done? And also we explored a little bit why. But aside from what the boiler inspection, the boiler certificate issues were raised, they also looked more broadly at the whole like high pressure systems in the factory, so and the steam distribution, and identified quite a few hazards around that, which were not under the scope of the boiler inspection from the government. So it was broader in scope, but also complementing what the government inspector had found. So I think in that sense, that shouldn't really be a concern for factories because it's not contradicting. It's kind of complementing what's already being looked at, but also going a bit further or quite a bit further.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Anything in the Accord on trade unions, trade union representations, freedom of association, etc.?
Yeah, so there's a couple of references to freedom of association in the Accord text. So the first one is in the preamble, and signatories confirm that they will, that they're supportive and promoting of freedom of association in general. So just conforming to ILO conventions. But specifically under the training program, there is a module which covers freedom of association in relation to safety. So the fact that workers' representatives can raise safety issues and advocate on behalf of workers to have those safety issues addressed. And that element of freedom of association is covered under the under one of the training under part of the training program.
One last thing, and then we're going to do something quite different. Wastewater management, ETP, covered under this?
No, so the engineers, the inspectors would go and look at those areas to check for safety issues, so maybe fall hazards or whatever, but they wouldn't be looking at it from an environmental point of view around the actual effectiveness of a plant. So it's quite different in that sense to a lead standard.
Okay, thank you. If you've been looking at the chat box, you'll have seen several people demanding the right to say something here. One of whom is Mr. Junaid. George, can you put Junaid on?
Yes. Everybody hearing this?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Stephen, for giving me an opportunity to share my views on behalf of the association. First of all, I would say that Shahid Sattar of that Secretary ATMA was also in a point of view that he has to be given opportunity to share his views as well. Anyway, being a partner of the GIZ for so many years, I would like to elaborate and would like to address what are the issues which being addressed at this moment are somehow are in the favor and somehow are not in the favor of the association. So let me explain you that being an PHMA, I am representing right now and being a former chairman, we are already in this way of sharing that the fire and safety program with the accord is no doubt is the positive way, but we are already doing so with the GIZ for last so many years, as the Ubaid has already explained in his briefing. Now, I don't want to repeat what the Ubaid has said. I validate the Ubaid what has spoke today, but now at the same time, I would say that we are the legal body. We are the licensed body with the Ministry of Commerce, and we cannot do anything unless we are permitted to do so. So therefore, we have to ask you that why this accord has not been legally entered into the Pakistan territory. Because once they have come with publishing the newspaper, it was a very threatening and dreadful that they have already explained that this we are coming because of the safety reasons. OSH program is already, we are running with the GIZ. And if they are coming, and it cannot be overlapping of our programs which are running at this moment, we have no issue. But at least they have to prove that they are the legal entity at the Pakistan land. Because there is a law of Ministry of Interior, which I would like to explain, I'd like to speak right now, that policy of the regulations International Non-Governmental Organization in Pakistan 2015, which is the INGO's policy, was issued by the Ministry of Interior. And it was already been promulgated on the 1st October of 2015. The INGO policy regulates the registration, working, funding, monitoring, and other related aspects pertaining to all types of international non-government organization INGOs in Pakistan. Let me tell you that we have gone through with all your discussion, and kindly declare your entity, how it is being established in Pakistan, and international accord is the NGO, which is already been registered. And I think that when we talk about the issue of the sustainability, which already covered the three aspects, which everybody knows at this moment, and which does not cover with the point of view. So therefore, it looks that the accord is coming with the positive sense, no doubt, but they are not coming as the legal entity in Pakistan, because we cannot support unless they have to give the example, because we have already passed few meetings with the Accord team which came, and I think the representative of the Accord have not mentioned that they have already discussed with us, and we have given them the clear message that once you come up with your positivity, and then we will talk about this. So they have to take the NOC from the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Commerce, and MUFA, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And then they have to come up with the SCCP regulations. So we are the license body. We are already running under the trade ordinance and the company ordinance. So both are the parallel regulations. We have to abide the rules. And those to whom you are already asking to become the member of the Accord or something like that, they are also the first member of these associations, which are already running under the trade ordinance. So how can we bypass the regulations of the Pakistan, being a citizen of Pakistan? So please look into this matter and give us a positive approach so we can go through with this one in a way, because, and we don't want to see, because our two aspects of the slogans of the government, ease of doing business. We know that ILO and GIZ are doing ease of doing business for the associations and the members of the exporters. But at the same time, we find that when Accord will be established, will be coming to in force, it will be not the ease of doing business, but cost of doing business to be raised. And our program is cost of doing to be reduced. So therefore, it is my humble submission that once you come up with all the legalities, then we will welcome you. But unless you don't come, please, we have already sent the message to the Accord International, those who have come to Karachi, and Mr. Saeed Sattar has given all the verdicts, and they agreed to that extent. But you did not mention the representative of the Accord. Yes, it has already been discussed over there. Now, I would say that yes, we have already ratified the 27 conventions and the 6 conventions which are already on the way. So we are looking after. And at the same time, you know, the FIT, FATF, we already been out of from the grace list. And we don't want it, because that they will come with the fear factor, which I say, because that they have come with the Rana Plaza and Ali Enterprise in Pakistan. Ali Enterprise was a terrorism attack. If they have their means for the safety and they control the terrorism in Pakistan, we welcome you, no issue. But it doesn't mean that safety means that on the factory purposes only. This factory was already burned because you have come with this slogan. And I think it was not the legally, because court have already placed the orders in respect of the Ali Enterprise, which already been the attack and the terrorism, and it was not the fire accident. So please look into this, all the issues, and there are other issues which I thank you for giving your precious time. And NCC is already coming again with the National Compliance Center. So there are a lot of things which you have to consider before coming in to Pakistan and to enforce all the rules and regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar. I appreciate that. I was going to invite Mr. Shahid Sattar to also speak, but we've run well over time now. I'm thinking I'm just a small potato and I don't control things. But I would really welcome another webinar, deep dive with some Pakistani stakeholders to give their views. So I really appreciate that contribution, Mr. Mukhtar. Really interesting to hear. I suspect Mary, if you'd like to respond, but I just like to leave that in the recording as a kind of a contribution into this discussion. This won't be the last time I'm sure we visit Pakistan Accord. I guess, Miriam, is there anything you just want to finish on in response to that? I guess I should give you 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, very short. I mean, Mr. Mukhtar, thank you for your comments. I think perhaps you didn't join right at the beginning of the session, because we opened the session and there was a comment from Shahid Sattar to the effect of what you've said. So it's very well noted that the Accord can't operate in Pakistan without having a legal status, and we well understand that and wouldn't want to bypass anything. The Accord isn't an NGO; it's not an INGO. We're a service provider. We work on behalf of the company signatories. So I wanted to clarify that. Yeah, and I think I mentioned at the beginning of this session, really for clarification, that as far as the Accord is concerned with Pakistan, the status is simply that our signatories have agreed amongst themselves that they would like to start a program with the suppliers to the company signatories to contribute to enhancing a culture of safety in the industry. So that's as far as we've got. We haven't, and we're not claiming, and we've never put out a sense that we've started a program there. We haven't started a program in Pakistan yet. We want to start a program there. So I think that distinction was made right at the start of this session, and maybe people missed that. But absolutely agree with you that we understand that we need to establish as a legal entity, and we wouldn't want to bypass any of those processes. Just to your point about, so the Accord is not an NGO, whether you call it INGO or NGO. So we're a private organisation working for the signatory brands. But I should wrap up there because I know, Stephen, you need to conclude this session.
No, as is often the case, things get interesting at the end. It takes a while for people to warm up. Mr. Makhdar, my humble apologies, and also my humble apologies to Mr. Shahid Sattar. I've really got to call a stop to it now. I will talk to GIZ about the possibility, perhaps, of something, going into greater detail about this at some future date. I think there's a lot of questions raised here. There's a lot of issues, but I do have to stop it there. Look, thank you very much to our three guests, Callie, Miriam, and Ubed. A huge amount of information here. Thank you to everybody in the chat box. This is our most vigorous discussion yet, I think, which doesn't surprise me a great deal, but it's great for everyone to have their say. And I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but there was a tremendous amount there. I think we've got to revisit this. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for hosting, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Very interesting discussion. What's going on there, and maybe Callie, that's what your town hall was like. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam. Thank you,
Bye.
Callie. Thanks, Ben. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, look, if you've got time to fill out the survey, there's a little online poll if you're an attendee, if you've got time to fill that out. I'm sorry, I got so excited by the discussion, I forgot about it. Yeah, really, really interesting. And my apologies again to Mr. Shahid Sattar. And I know Mr. Makhdar wanted to come back on, but we just can't. Our guests have given us 90 minutes of their time, and they need to get on.